Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today's video is going to be for those of you who follow my channel for mental health, psychology related things. As many of you know, I work in the mental health field, but what some of you may not know is I myself struggle with a lot of mental health issues as well. So I wanted to film this video to talk more about how those two things intersect and how I kind of deal with that, coping strategies, and yeah. And I feel like everyone struggles with mental health on like some level, but for those of you who maybe experience it a little bit more intensely or to a higher, deeper level, and then are also thinking of doing some sort of helping profession, I'm hoping that you can find this video relatable and maybe find some helpful tips or tricks from this. So let's get into the video. So first I wanted to kind of talk about what got me interested in the mental health field in general. When I was in high school, I had a friend who had been through the foster system and she eventually got adopted, but she had just told me some pretty horrible, disheartening things that had happened to her while she was in the foster system, and it really just opened my eyes to the reality of what some people have to go through. And someone just started vacuuming in the hallway, which is probably going to be super loud, so I apologize if you hear that in the background. But anyway, I did live like a fairly sheltered childhood, which in some respects I'm very grateful for, because you know, I didn't have to go through a lot of hardships during that time. My parents, I feel like, did a very good job of, protecting me and providing me with what I needed. And of course I knew that there were kids that, didn't have that, but I think that this was the first time that it affected me on like a personal level. So from there, I started doing more research. I started watching a lot of like short films about the adoption process and the foster system and all of that. And the deeper I dug into it, like the more problematic I found that the system was. So that's kind of what sparked my initial interest. And then when I was going into undergrad, I actually originally went in as a nursing major. I thought that by going into nursing, it would be a little bit more of a stable career path for me. To be honest, I didn't know a ton about getting into psychology field. I didn't really know anyone who was in the psychology field. So nursing to me just seemed like a way I could help people that was also pretty straightforward. You have everything laid out for you for the most part. But I very quickly realized after my first term that just wasn't for me. It wasn't where my strengths lied and really where like my heart and passion was. So after my first term of university, I switched to be a psychology major. And I also forgot to mention, when I was trying to choose a major, I was actually debating between nursing and social work, because I did know someone who was in social work at the time. But after speaking with her, she was a caseworker, and if you don't know about caseworkers, they are literal angels. The stuff that they have to do and go through is just I just knew that it was something that I could never do. And I think on a different perspective at the time, I was a lot more interested in doing individual work and working with people to like a longer extent, like really seeing the progress. So that is mainly why I decided against doing social work. However, I did take a lot of like sociology, social work related courses. I mean, social work and psychology, a lot of the classes somewhat overlap. And then later on in my program, I did also add on a counseling minor. And I took a lot of credits throughout college. Most semesters I was taking between like 16 and 18. So I finished my classes pretty early, and I probably could have graduated early if I wanted to try hard enough to do that, but like I didn't. Because I wanted to like graduate with my friends, but then COVID happened and just messed everything up. Anyway, I took every single undergrad course in psychology that my university offered, and then I took whatever graduate level courses that they would allow me to take during my time there. I think it was think it was my sophomore year, I did an internship at a youth shelter where I essentially just ran, or I helped run, I couldn't run them on my own, but I helped run like group therapy sessions. This was like a respite shelter for kids who had a home but something was going on in their home, whether it was just tension in the family or something bigger. And then after I graduated, I did somewhat question what I wanted to do after graduation, because it had always kind of been, oh, I'll go to grad school. But then when it was really time to apply and get into it, I think I just kind of had like a quarter life crisis about like, well, what is it that I really want to do? But as you know, I ended up going to Pepperdine, getting my master's in clinical psych. Now I work as a coordinator for a program at an organization that helps youth and families deal with the loss of a sibling or parent, spouse, who they lost to homicide. But among all of this, I also do deal with my own mental health issues. I thought when I was younger that it was a lot of just like generalized anxiety, and then I realized that, well, when I was 16, when I was talking to a doctor about it, that's when I like officially got diagnosed with like OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder. And that all made so much sense because obsessive compulsive disorder does have a lot of anxiety tied to it. And it just made sense because most of my anxiety was related to lack of control. And it's slightly different from generalized anxiety because it wasn't like I always felt anxious. I only felt anxious when I was in a situation that I could not control. I did go to therapy when I was younger, like in high school, but only for a few sessions because the therapist was not super helpful, unfortunately. And so I just kind of learned how to deal with it myself. And at the time I wasn't living with Damick, so I had a lot of freedom to, like, my life was my own kind of thing. And then when we moved in together, there was a lot of weird quirks or things that I had, like ways I would control things that affected him in a negative way. And I had to kind of learn how to change those. And I could talk about all of this for hours, but I don't want to make this video ridiculously long, so maybe I'll get into that in a different video. But then when I went to Pepperdine, as some of you know, was not a good experience for me. During that time, I did get very depressed, which is what encouraged me to finally start going to therapy. And it wasn't like I was against therapy, obviously. It was more so that I just didn't have any money, and I was scared to, my health insurance didn't cover it, and so I was like, I don't know how to pay for this. Our school offered like 6 free sessions, which the reason that I roll my eyes is because of how expensive the tuition is. I should have unlimited free sessions. But after that, like, I found a therapist that was able to work with me as far as like the cost aspect of it. And therapy definitely was extremely helpful. I still go to therapy now, but I do think the depression, I feel like once you get to that place, it is something that never fully goes away. It just becomes easier to manage. So I would say it's not something that today affects my everyday life, but of course I still have periods where I go back to, you know, a sad, dark, lonely place. With the OCD, that is something that does affect me more so on a level that I can see and other people can see as well. Something that was really big for me when I started my internship in grad school and was starting to see clients was at times I felt kind of hypocritical because some clients would be dealing with the same, well, not the exact same, but very similar situations as I was. And I was sitting here trying to help them solve this problem, this thing that's causing issues in their life, when I had that exact same problem. And what's funny is a lot of times it ended up being effective for the client. Like, they were able to really reduce their stress. And I think that that's something that a lot of people ask me about when I do talk about my mental health issues is, almost like, well, how do you still have these problems? How is this still something you're struggling with when you know, have the answers? I mean, I don't have all the answers, obviously. You know, the honest answer is I don't know. And sometimes, even when I go to therapy, it's hard because I already know what she's gonna say most of the time, because I would say the same thing if I was talking to a client. But to be honest, it took me a little while to be okay with the fact that I can have these issues, I can have these struggles, but I can still help other people deal with the same issues or struggles. The way that I do that and do that successfully, or at least I think so, is to really separate myself from like personal life to work life. And I think everyone in every career has to do that to an extent, but especially in the mental health field or really any sort of caring, like helping profession, you really have to be there for your client. Like that person is the reason that you have a job, right? I think you owe it to them to show up and be there for them. And not to say that you can't ever have a bad day, like we're people too, right? But I think for me it was really practicing turning off that anxiety. Like I do a lot of like visualization, I would say. So like almost looking at it as a switch of like, okay, turn off this switch, turn on this one, and really just try to be there in the moment for the client. I change the way that I present myself, the way that I talk. I tell this to my friends all the time, but I don't want to give them therapy. You know, like I want to just be myself and be with my friends and family and whatever, and just be able to give them advice. Because in therapy, it's more so like you help the client come to the conclusion, where like in my personal life, I just want to tell people, hey, this is what I think you should do. And the latter is definitely maybe not the most effective, but that's me, you know, and I want to be able to separate those personas or whatever, because that's how I'm able to do this job and also keep my personality. I know that sounds weird, but if you really think about it, you truly are a slightly different person around in every setting that you're in, at work, with your friends, with your family, around strangers. You're always going to present yourself a little bit differently. And I think that maybe for this, it's a little bit more intentional than maybe the other ones are. I think that it's also something that's essential to learn how to do when you get into this field. Another thing that I think has really been helpful for me when dealing with my mental health issues is just to keep myself busy, which sounds so small and insignificant, but it truly, when you have free time to just sit with your thoughts, if you are someone with an anxious mind, a lot of times it does more harm than good. And I'm not advocating for avoidance. I definitely think that it's important to feel those emotions. And sometimes I tell Damick when I'm sad, and he's like, well, what can I do to make you feel better? I'm like, no, I just want to feel sad right now. You know, like, it's kind of like sometimes I just feel like I need a good cry. There's maybe nothing that's feasibly wrong in my life, but for some reason I just need to like cry, and then I'm able to move on, and I'm, you know, fine after that. And so it's not that I don't let myself feel those emotions, but I think there's a line of letting yourself feel those, and then if you push past that line, it can sometimes get you to a darker headspace, like where you start spiraling, and it just doesn't, it goes downhill from there. And I think also surrounding yourself with very understanding and supportive people in your life can be very helpful in struggling with those issues. As I said before, I do believe that everyone kind of struggles with some element of mental health in their own way, but I think it's important to remember that you've never truly experienced it on the same level as someone else. And so as much as you want to say, oh, like, you have anxiety, I have anxiety too, so I get it. You don't, really, because you don't know how that person truly feels anxiety and how those symptoms manifest for them. And so I think when you're trying to support someone who is struggling, a big part of it is just to listen and to be empathetic. I know Damek is a big problem solver, so he always wants to ask me, you know, how can I fix this? And that's not really what I need, right? Because one, I'm the only one who can actually fix my internal issues, but two, it's not necessarily something always that needs to be fixed. And so when I talk about being supportive, it might entail a lot less than you think you would need to do. I feel like that was kind of a lot. I know this video is probably going to be very long, and I also think that a lot of these things I just grazed the surface of. But if you're still here at the end of this video, I appreciate you watching this and following along on this journey with me. If you have any questions or concerns, please put them in the comments down below. A lot of people also have reached out to me on Instagram, so my Instagram is in the bio, or not the bio, the description box. And thank you guys all so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more future videos, please hit that subscribe button below. Also, if you have any video suggestions, please let me know, because I'm always open to that. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. See you in my next video. Bye.